Rupert Lowe, a Reform MP and possibly the most popular Reform MP after Nigel Farage, has been suspended from the party following a series of allegations that we are going to go through. These allegations are very strangely worded, and things have come out that suggest that maybe the wording was designed to make people think one thing while actually saying another. So we'll get to that shortly. Before we do, Islander number 3 is on sale. It's on sale for, I think, another 2 weeks, so get it while you can, because when it's gone, it won't be coming back. And let's begin. So, Rupert Lowe is a known quantity. A lot of people didn't know who Rupert Lowe was before he became an MP for Reform, and I didn't. But this is something that is down to the fact that he was involved in an area of life that if you weren't paying attention to, of course, you would have never heard of him. He was a successful businessman. He began in banking, became a successful businessman managing nursing homes, and then in the 1990s took over Southampton Football Club, which is my dad's football club, and became the manager for a decade. Now, I don't follow football at all, so I had no idea about any of this. He did for more than a decade, in fact. And in 2019, Nigel Farage asked him to stand for the Brexit Party, and he became an MEP. In 2023, he returned to Reform UK as their business and agriculture spokesman. Then he contested the 2024 Kingswood by-election, came in third place with more than 10%, which was the best by-election they'd ever received until Ben Habib got 13% in a by-election. And then in the July 2024 election, he stood for Great Yarmouth and won 35.3% of the vote, making him an MP. He is also the MP who donates his entire salary as an MP to charity every month because, of course, he's independently wealthy and therefore doesn't need it. And so recently he did an interview with the Daily Mail in which he said that Nigel Farage acts somewhat like a messiah, and he had a few other criticisms in there as well about the party structure. And he says, quote, "We need to start behaving as if we are leading and not merely protesting." This was taken very badly by Reform and Nigel Farage, and they went to report him to the police.
Why?
Yeah, why? Exactly. Suddenly the day afterwards, a series of allegations were made against Rupert Lowe, which the timing seemed more than coincidental. You had Isabel Oakeshott going on Talk TV and smirking about how naive Richard was. Poor little Richard doesn't understand how politics works. And then suddenly, bam, you've been reported to the police for several allegations, including workplace bullying made by 2 female employees. And one against Zia Youssef as well, which came as something as a surprise because Rupert Lowe, well, like I said, he's a known quantity. He doesn't seem to be a very aggressive person personally, and it seems unlikely that a 67-year-old man would be trying to bully a 38-year-old man as well.
And also, these are accusations, as you said.
Yeah, they're just
it's one thing for accusations to be made and quite another for them to be proven true, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Whether they are ridiculous or not.
Completely correct.
Yeah. But also, it seems to me that we're talking about 2 completely different kinds of people here, because you're not talking about a career politician. You're talking about someone who has made a whole career in the market, let's say. Yep. It's not where he isn't just constantly rescued by other people, and so his mentality is going to be different. That's how I'm interpreting the statement he made about leading rather than reacting.
Yeah, I mean, what these are constructive criticisms, right? Yes. What he had made were constructive criticisms that were actually useful to the party. Say, look, we need to have an established front bench that people can buy into if they want to see what would our government look like. Will it be this person there, that person there, that person there? These are criticisms I've made myself. They are sensible criticisms. Instead, Reform are still acting as if they're not the next government, which I don't think was up until this point true. I mean, they were doing very, very well in the polls, and there was no reason to think that they shouldn't be planning for government, actually. And I've been predicting this for a while. But anyway, so this was the statement they put on the 7th, signed by Lee Anderson and Zia Youssef. It is with regret we feel obligated to disclose that the party received complaints from 2 female employees about serious bullying in the offices of the Member of Parliament for Great Yarmouth. Right. About serious bullying in the offices of Rupert Lowe. And then we are going to suspend Rupert Lowe, which in people's minds creates a natural connection. There is bullying in the offices of Rupert Lowe. We are suspending Rupert Lowe. Ergo, a normal, reasonable person would assume that that means Rupert Lowe had been bullying someone, and therefore he is suspended pending investigation. Interesting.
It seems to me to be entirely a recipe for disaster, because if you suspend members of your party, especially members who are actually very vocal and are among the most popular of your party, if you suspend them merely on the accusation that they've done something wrong, then you're communicating to everyone in the political sphere, if you want someone out of my party, just accuse them and I'll do so readily.
I mean, they say here, evidence was provided to us of workplace bullying, the targeting of female staff who raised concerns, and evidence of derogatory and discriminatory remarks made about women, including reference to a perceived disability. Okay, but was it by Rupert? Because notice what they're not saying there is Rupert Lowe. There is evidence that Rupert Lowe did these things. So far, they have not actually pointed the finger at Rupert. What they have said is his offices have done this. And so that's very, very interesting, isn't it? And what's also interesting is apparently these complaints were made in December. So they have sat on these complaints for 3 months. And it's only after Rupert Lowe suggests that Nigel Farage considers himself some sort of political messiah for reform and doesn't play well with others that suddenly this all comes out. Well, the timing hasn't escaped anyone, of course. And Nigel Farage put out a statement in the Telegraph saying, quote, reform has acted responsibly over Rupert Lowe. Well, okay, why exactly did you wait 3 months? Why didn't you do it on the day that you received these allegations? Why 3 months? Why not 2 months? Why not a week? Why not that day? He says, and this, again, pay attention very closely to the wording that is being used here. So far, there's no actual allegation against Rupert Lowe. They've just suspended him. If the last general election has taught us anything, it's that the public does not like political parties that engage in constant infighting. Right? Okay, so that's nothing to do with an allegation. Thanks to one of our MPs, Rupert Lowe, unloading a barrage of criticisms against our operations and its main actors, that sense of unity has been dented. Right. So this is the real issue here, is that Rupert Lowe, and this is how he begins it, that sense of unity has been dented. Third paragraph in. So the main issue, the primary thing that they lead with, is that Rupert Lowe criticised the party in public. Well, Rupert Lowe says that he'd been trying to raise these criticisms in private, but was getting stonewalled. So who knows? Anyway, moving on, in fact, further down, he says, somewhere quite far down here, actually, there we go. Zia Youssef, the chairman, showed me 2 letters sent by female members of staff to our party headquarters. Each letter contained an accusation of workplace bullying involving Mr. Lowe. Right, involving, but not by Mr. Lowe. Very, very, exactly, slippery wording.
But also accusations.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're false, but they're not necessarily true either.
Sure, but
it remains to be seen.
I agree, but the wording is the thing to pay attention to. An accusation of workplace bullying involving Mr. Lowe. Now, Stelios, if you were bullying Harry, and I came over and said, Stelios, you have to stop that, you could render an accusation of workplace bullying in Lotus Eaters involving me, even though I would be the one directly interceding, stopping you from bullying Harry. Just to be clear, Stelis is a lovely gentleman and would never bully Harry. Also, Harry is a giant. So it would be difficult for you to do. But the point is, that would be technically involving me. The language would be correct, even though it would be misleading. And again, no direct, not by Rupert Lowe, just involving Rupert Lowe. Well, it's his office, so you can expand this to quite as well. It's it's your dements. Why aren't you dealing with this thing in your office?
So it could mean someone else did whatever they did, and Rupert Lowe was present or was in the office or something.
Maybe he wasn't even present, but it's his office anyway. So ultimately, the buck has to stop with him. Right. So that's interesting. And so he says, he finishes by saying, it's so important that our party and every single one of our representatives behaves responsibly at all times. Well, there's not actually an allegation of Rupert Lowe behaving irresponsibly in this. There's just a series of very, very cunningly worded statements to imply that Rupert Lowe has done something. There is no direct allegation in all of this.
The question is, we need to. The point is, we need to read between the lines, and when they are using language like that, they use the notion of responsibility. It's an abstract concept. You need to flesh it out. You need to understand how the person is using it, and most probably, it's as you said in the very beginning, that behaving responsibly consists in never criticizing the party line.
That appears to be the Reform opinion on what responsible behaviour is. Anyway, so Rupert Lowe took to Twitter to make a very long and detailed rebuttal of this, saying, quote, "These allegations are not against me personally, but the office. Both of these employees only raised their complaints once disciplinary proceedings had started against both of them for serious offences. They both admitted to these offences, no complaints whatsoever before. Parliamentary HR were involved every step of the way, and full parliamentary process was followed. One of the individuals later dropped her appeal. They were parliamentary employees, not Reform employees." Now, he goes on at length saying that he has obviously complied with everything that's happening, and that he has plenty of evidence to back up what he's saying and things like this. And I'm sure that when this all goes to court, as it's inevitably going to, I think, at this point, we'll get to see exactly what the details are. Rupert also claims to have been completely cooperative and received this from the Parliamentary King's Counsel. Now, for anyone not British, that's just a senior lawyer, basically, who has given, she has given Rupert this advice, says, quote, "I advised that you should simply say that the party was precipitous to state that these allegations had been made without also saying that the party had commissioned an independent investigation and the investigation not yet got underway to look at all the evidence and evaluate its veracity." He also then says, so the council is saying, well, the party seems to have acted a bit too swiftly here, without doing the things they ought to have done in order to make sure that this investigation was going to go ahead with
no due process. But also the question is, who has the burden of proof here?
Well, the people making the allegation.
Exactly.
But the thing again, okay, if this had been done on, say, Wednesday last week, okay, maybe one could understand. But no, it was in December. They had all the time in the world to get this done. There's no reason that they should be jumping the gun on this, because this apparently happened months ago. Notice he says there, he's spoken to the KC at length on the phone and through message. "I've got to know her over the last week. She's been very helpful, charming lady who's trying to do her job in a very difficult position." And he, in another message, says that she's been shocked by this, and so she had to publicly say, "No, actually, I don't say that I'm shocked." So what I'm thinking here is that Rupert's probably picked up the phone. She said, "Oh yeah, that's terrible." But she was appointed by Reform. And so if she seems to be sympathetic to his cause, well, she's not going to get any more appointments by Reform, is she? So she is actually employed by Reform against him. And so she comes out and says, well, look, she said, the lawyer herself, who's not been named, but whose credentials have been verified by the BBC, says, "I've seen a number of statements made by Mr. Lowe which are attributed to me and describe my reactions to the process conducted by the party and to the allegations made. I find myself in the unfortunate and regrettable position of having to make this statement to correct the record. I have not expressed either dismay or shock at this time or any time to the process, nor have I said there is zero credible evidence against Mr. Lowe, let alone said this repeatedly." Well, those were Lowe's statements about there being zero credible evidence as far as I'm aware. But okay, so she didn't say she was dismayed or shocked. And again, I get the feeling that she's kind of got to say this because she needs to cover for herself with her bosses. She can't. Rupert Lowe probably shouldn't have made her sound so sympathetic, frankly. But okay, small thing, not in any way germane to the substance of what is being talked about. And that's an important thing to remember. She hasn't said that Rupert Lowe is guilty or something like this, and she hasn't retracted her statement that the Reform Party acted precipitously. They obviously did. So the next thing that happened was that many people came out and said, what, Rupert Lowe was bullying someone? Because, like I said, Rupert Lowe is a known quantity, and people have been working for him for years. So this is David Maddox, who is the political editor of The Independent. Now, The Independent is one of the most left-wing newspapers in the country. They are insanely woke. insanely Remainer. They led a Remain campaign for years after the Brexit vote. They have been absolutely as woke on pronouns and immigration and everything else. The only thing they've actually been good on is grooming gangs, actually. The Independent has actually been really firm on the grooming gang issue, but on every other issue, they've taken the most radically left-wing stance in the world. And so when the political editor of the Independent comes out and says, well, hang on a second, I interviewed all of the other Brexit Party MEPs 6 years, and so they've been working with Rupert Lowe for 6 years, and I asked the other ones if there are any signs of trouble with Lowe then, and they said no. They described him as a team player with a teddy bear personality.
Well, how convenient that someone who hasn't had a whole career in politics ends up being a very popular MP and suddenly gets allegations on character, despite having a whole career of no stain to his reputation.
I mean, Rupert Lowe was the manager of Southampton FC when Matt Letizia was there. And Matt Letizia said, from what I know about Rupert Lowe, these accusations would be incredibly out of character. And there were loads of others that I featured in a stream I did the other day. Whereas a woman saying, look, I've known him for 45 years. There's no way he was bullying a couple of women in his office. This is nonsense. And exactly as you say, he comes out, criticizes Nigel Farage and reform, and suddenly, actually, it's just as his star is rising that he becomes a really bad person. Yes. Which, I'm just saying, at 67 years old, people aren't inclined to change that much. Actually, I think your character's probably fairly well set by that point. But anyway, another thing is, and again, you can't help but notice this remarkable pattern here, but it was Rupert Lowe who's basically doing the work, right? Rupert Lowe is the only person in reform basically doing any work. So you get to submit written questions to the government that the government has to answer. So they're a useful weapon, as Wolf here points out, for backbenchers to actually get the government to admit things it otherwise wouldn't want to admit. And Rupert Lowe submitted 965 of these. He's only been an MP for 6 months. So that's an incredibly high rate of work that Rupert Lowe's been doing. Tice has done 120, and Farage himself has done 20. So I'm starting to see what's going on here.
I think Rupert Lowe has been excellent in communicating and also criticizing the government.
He's been superb.
He has been superb, and every statement of his is incredibly polished and professional.
Yes. And he was the one who managed to smooth over the Tommy Robinson issue, for example, because Nigel kept dropping the ball on it. And Rupert Lowe came out and said, no, we appreciate what he's done, but we need to move on and actually get this fixed.
But this, the whole ordeal that happened during the weekend, I think is a refutation of a theory that several reform fans have, according to which they said that Nigel needs to take a step back. He is being criticized as not being like Trump, but the system is different here, and his MPs need to win in their constituencies, and he has to sort of go back and allow them room to breathe. But it looks like Rupert Lowe made the most out of it, and he is exactly punished for it. So this theory is being refuted.
Yes. So, I mean, not only was Rupert Lowe doing the work in the parliament, he was also doing the work in the party. Rupert Lowe was apparently hosting a dinner for reform donors hours before he was reported to police by Zia Youssef. So Rupert Lowe is there fundraising for the party. He's there in Parliament all the time. And often you'll only see Rupert Lowe on his own in the Parliament, standing there, making a statement. And even then, that's still not good enough, which is very interesting. He was there with Nick Candy. And so the BBC went down to Great Yarmouth and said, okay, well, what do people in Great Yarmouth think of Rupert Lowe? And my God, this is bad news for Farage, I would say. I mean, you can see Angela Grout said she was gobsmacked by the developments, saying that she had an issue with her local housing issue with the local council. Rupert Lowe had intervened and the problem was resolved the following day. He's a great guy, she said. He's been doing a lot for Great Yarmouth. Lowe was described as the best MP Great Yarmouth ever had by Chris Breon from Hemsby, a village in the constituency, which is suffering from severe coastal erosion. He's done more for us with the flood defences, giving money to good causes. No disrespect, but the last MP was about as useful as an ashtray on a motorbike. Norman said... Norman runs an antique shop near Great Yarmouth's marketplace, praised Lowe for donating his salary to a range of charities, local charities in Great Yarmouth. Incidentally, again, like, if you want to pick a fight with someone, try not picking a fight with the one guy in Parliament who's good, right? The one good guy in Parliament. Like, He says he's a rich man, so he's not doing it for the money, is he? He's doing it to help this area. Yeah, what else could you take from this?
Well, you could say that this is precisely why they're waging war against him.
Well, yes, actually, you could say that. So, yeah, Rupert Lowe basically is saving puppies all over Great Yarmouth. And the people of Great Yarmouth, the BBC have every reason to come out against Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe is, as far as they're concerned, like hard right when it comes to like immigration and things like this. The Independent, every reason to hate Rupert Lowe because he's far right as far as they're concerned. And yet, what do they get when they go around asking people on the streets? Cherise Pollard says, "This is the first thing I've heard about them that's negative." The first bad thing anyone's ever said. And the worst thing they have in this article about Rupert Lowe from one of the residents is David and his wife, who says, "Well, we're not huge fans because he's not from around here." No, he's not. He's not from around there. And that's it. He's not from around here, which is the worst thing that they can say. And so lots of people found this sus on GB News and Talk TV. Lots of people were like, well, hang on a second. It's obvious they'd had enough of Lowe and just wanted to get rid of him. This appears to be premeditated. And there was another one. But I've obviously got the wrong link twice. So anyway, this was all fascinating and seemed like an obvious premeditated way that they'd kept in their back pocket. So when Rupert Lowe finally becomes too big for his boots and dares criticize Nigel Farage one too many times, and remember, Elon Musk was like, Nigel Farage isn't the guy. He doesn't have what it takes. Rupert Lowe's good. Reform needs a new leader. Well, you can tell, I think, at that point, Rupert Lowe was a marked man, and so they kept this in their back pocket. It's an allegation. Well, let's go to the allegation, actually, because Andrew Bridgen, one of the allegations was made by one of his former parliamentary aides, and he says she went on to work for Rupert Lowe. She is one of the staff involved in these allegations against him. She has told me that her original complaint had nothing to do with Rupert personally and was related to the actions of another member of his staff. Right. So, this means that, and the other one dropped the allegation, right? And it wasn't against Rupert anyway, it was against someone else. And so Rupert tweets out, "The main staff member involved has confirmed her allegations are not about me. The second staff member's allegations were also not about me. So there are, as far as I'm aware, apart from the allegation from Zia Yusuf of Rupert bullying him, there are and again, that doesn't seem to be the thing people are focusing on. Like, Zia Yusuf hasn't made a statement about her or anything like this. It's been about, and Nigel Farage didn't make a statement about Zia Yusuf. And so, what are the allegations?
Well, this seems to me to be a sort of very disruptive behavior. It seems vile. It seems intentionally disruptive because it's, let's make accusations, let's project misogyny that women are not particularly against. It looks like it.
They're trying to create a kind of woke allegation.
They try to create a stain, and they know that in the general public, this is going to stick.
Theoretically, in previous eras, it might have stuck, but Rupert Lowe's a good man, and he's obviously been doing the right thing, and people really like him for it. His own constituency, like, best MP we've ever had. Like, he's actually solving my problems, and so obviously we need to splatter him with this muck. But again, the allegations are not actually about him, so why are we even having this conversation, if not the fact that Rupert Lowe is starting to make Nigel Farage feel inferior?
Well, people who are independent financially are less easy to control.
You know what? Put a pin in that, because we'll come back to that in a minute, right? Because that is basically the issue here. And so Lee Anderson replied to this just before the podcast, said, the independent Casey, the King's Counsel, investigating the allegations, already publicly rebuked Mr. Lowe for making false claims. Right, okay, yeah. She publicly rebuked him for saying that she was sympathetic to his plight. Not that he was innocent or guilty, not the allegations were even against him, Lee. What a slimy way of approaching it. This is the sort of thing I'd expect from the BBC, Lee. The way that they would try and paste over the actual detail of the fact in order to make it seem like that person was a bad person. This is precisely the kind of thing they've done to you, so it's very disappointing to see you doing it to Rupert Lowe. But then he says, as the Casey statement makes clear, the written complaints include allegations about the conduct of Mr. Lowe. Where? Where are they? Because in the written statement that you've made, it was the office of Rupert Lowe, and both of the complainants have apparently come out and said, no, it's not about Lowe himself. So why are you saying this? This is in direct contradiction, and I'd like to see some evidence. What are the allegations? Show me the actual written allegations. I mean, in fact, I replied to this, and he got 379 likes. I got 2,300. Where are Where are the allegations? Show us the written allegations that you've sent to the police, word for word, that name Rupert Lowe and what he's done, so he can at least defend himself.
Why is this? Does this constitute no respecting? Why can't he defend himself?
Well, that's another great question, isn't it? Why shouldn't you're doing everything you can to publicly I don't want to say defame, but to publicly blacken his reputation? Why should he not come out and use his public platform to defend himself? In fact, it seems crazy that he wouldn't, especially as it seems, I mean, I'm not really inclined to believe he was being a bully.
Well,
I'm going to take the people who knew him for literally decades over, whatever's happening here.
I think an important issue of communication is quantity. So as you said in the very beginning, the way they framed the accusations, they wanted to link the image of Rupert Lowe as a bully to the accusations.
Yep.
And they wanted this to be the main message that was going to be heard. But the more Rupert Lowe is defending himself and other people are defending Rupert Lowe, the more the quantity shifts. And he comes off as someone who is basically defending himself.
Yep.
Other people are saying, well, if we trust what Andrew Bridgen wrote, the allegations aren't exactly what they seemed. Mm-hmm. They aren't about him.
Well, even in Reform's own statement, it was the allegations were against the office of Rupert Lowe. You would just say against Rupert Lowe if the allegations were him personally. If he personally had been bullying two women who were working for him, the allegation would be, well, why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't the allegation be directly against him? It's crazy that Reform are being so slimy about this. And this is genuinely, I'm genuinely disgusted by what not only Zia Youssef and Lee Anderson have done, but the fact that Nigel Farage has come out and again slimed him as well. This is disgraceful. This is absolutely disgraceful. And I just don't see how Rupert Lowe warrants this for his mild constructive criticism that you could otherwise have just taken on board and benefited from. Like, to do what Rupert Lowe had suggested in the beginning in the Daily Mail interview would have been good for Reform and made you a stronger and more robust party. Instead, you've lent into this bizarre fragility and the politics of smearing people, just like the mainstream media. It's just really gross. And it's not lost on the Conservatives. Like, this is the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Phillip, coming out and saying, look, he got stabbed in the back by his own party. He's welcome to join the Conservatives. Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? In a year's time, Rupert Lowe might be leading the Conservatives. Like, what a fumble this will be if that happens. Like, who knows? I don't want to see the Conservatives resurrected out of obscurity, but who knows? It could well be that happens because of this bizarre fear of taking even the most mild criticism. But we'll get onto why that might be in a minute. Any last thoughts before we get to the comments?
No, I mean, it should absolutely not be the case, because if you want to have a big party, it can't be just structured around one person and everything that one person says.
Oh, really? That sounds like you're against
profound.
Yeah, that sounds like you're against messianic politics, Stelios.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the times people don't get the obvious, and the mistakes we are pointing out are obvious. So I think that yes, I mean, if Reform is to become a larger party, it's going to accommodate more voices.
Yeah.
Islander issue 3 is now available to purchase from shop.lotus.com and is the next step in the story that we are telling with this magazine. For this issue, we have collected piercing and esoteric essays from the finest right-wing minds on the theme of our civilizational winter. Each of our authors is an expert in bringing forth the most important hidden revelations from the lowest reaches of the soul, and it has all been beautifully rendered in a medievalist revivalist aesthetic. For this issue, I commissioned a new translation of the ancient Anglo-Saxon poem, The Wanderer, and have written a companion essay exploring how it is a reflection of our modern experience. I personally feel that this is the most important thing I've ever written, so I will be looking forward to your feedback on it. We have resolved our distribution issues, with the magazines being printed in advance of the orders, so we can guarantee that you will receive your copy very soon after ordering it, and you will also receive emailed updates so you can see exactly where it is. Hopefully, issue 3 can provide you with the space and context to engage in deep reflection about the nature of our circumstances, to discover hidden truths about yourself and find the resolve to make it through our spiritual exile.